Hello, I'm Michael Burkley. I'm the Vice Moderator of the Albany Presbytery and a member of the Koinonia team. Koinonia in Greek means a common life. And our team is dedicated to increasing the common life of the presbytery, but rather not just make it common, but make it more uncommon and exceptional so that the world can see how they love one another. One of the ways we're doing that is by encouraging people to participate in the activities of the presbytery and being servants. And one of the ways we're doing that is by encouraging everyone to make some loaves of bread and bring to the presbytery. At our last presbytery meeting, I made 98 loaves of bread, and we gave them out to everyone who came and shared in the Lord's Supper. And I'm not really interested in doing that all again, but I'm more interested in having you share in the ministry of making bread. I like making bread because Jesus was born in Bethlehem, and Bethlehem means the house of bread, and he called himself the bread of life. And so when we share a loaf of bread, it can remind us of Jesus. So at our next presbytery meeting in March, we're hoping that a lot of people will bring bread and we'll give it out to everyone who comes for communion. But instead of having the gift for themselves this time, we're hoping that they will give that loaf of bread to someone in their church, or to use it for communion in their church as a reminder that presbytery is there to serve them. So I'm going to share with you a very simple recipe for making bread. It starts with 3 tablespoons of sugar, a tablespoon or a packet of yeast. If you're going to make 2 loaves of bread, you use a packet of yeast. If you're going to make 14 loaves of bread, you make a packet of yeast. And 1 tablespoon of salt. The salt is, you can use a little less or a little bit more, but if you don't include any salt in the bread, it really tastes terrible. So I would encourage you to do that. And then add just a little bit of flour. I'm not sure how much flour I'm going to need. So this right here is 6 cups of flour. And then I just mix all of this together so that the yeast gets mixed in with everything, the sugar gets mixed in. You can usually, and I add a little flour, because if I didn't add the flour, you should not add the salt until later, because the flour helps the salt to manage, or the yeast to manage the salt, otherwise it doesn't grow as well. Then I have 1 quart of water that is at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about the temperature that you'd be washing your dishes at. I've washed my hands, so you just stick it in and you say, oh yeah, that's not burning my finger, it's not cool. And then you take half of that and just dump it in and stir it up. Now, back in your grandparents' or great-grandparents' day, you would have to leave this for, quite a while, and to make sure the yeast was really working. Nowadays, with the packaged yeasts that they have, you don't have to worry about it all. But I usually just let it sit there for a little bit, and I've only poured half of it in because this will stay warm. As soon as the water gets into this, it starts cooling off. And the yeast grows at the best temperature of about 100 to 110 degrees. So I'll add warm water to this and it will end up working out well. So I've done that a little bit. I'll add the rest. And now comes the really exacting part of adding just the right amount of flour. You add it in however you do it. You just stir it around and you say, oh, I need more flour than that because it's still just a liquid. And so we add some more. And you stir it in. The nice thing about bread is that I can add more sugar or less salt, you know, more yeast or less yeast. A grain of yeast will be enough, you know, because 1 grain of yeast will grow and multiply. It will just take longer to rise the bread than it would be otherwise. That's how they used to do it in the ancient days, is take a little bit of the dough from the previous batch of bread and use it to rise the flour. And that's the 6 loaves of 6 cups of flour, and it's not quite enough. I'm using a wooden spoon with the long thing. I like it because it doesn't hurt my hand. Once it starts getting a little thick, you start scraping the edge of the bowl and flipping it over, and that lets the flour continue to be mixed in well with everything else. And I do that, and you see that's not thick enough to roll out yet, so you get some more flour, and you add exacting amounts of it, and you keep on scraping the edge and flipping it over, keeping on doing that. And you never know how much flour you're going to use, because each batch you use a little bit more or less liquid. If you wanted to, you could use just milk instead of water, or you could use half milk and half flour. If you add milk to it, it will make a softer dough. This dough is going to be more like a French bread, since I'm not including any butter in it. Now you see how it's getting a little bit stiffer as I turn it. It still needs more flour. You're working to the point where it really isn't sticky on your hands anymore. And I pick it up. Now I'm having to hold on to it and flip it over. And still scraping the edge. This will make about 2 loaves of bread. And it doesn't take much time at all. Most of the time is waiting for the bread to rise. We'll let it rise once, which depends on the temperature of your room, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours or more, and then you poke it down. It's doubled in bulk. When the dough has increased to twice in size, that's generally about an indication that the yeast has doubled and is working. Now, the yeast isn't just for making the bread rise as it eats the sugar and starches in the dough. It also adds a lot of flavor to the bread. So the longer you let the dough rise, the more flavorful your bread will be. Now you can see I'm not worrying too much about how much flour I'm adding. I'm mostly just feeling it, and really, see how my hand isn't sticking into it. It's not getting completely covered with sticky dough. So at this stage, right about like this, you take the dough out, you add a little flour to your counter, and you plop it down. And now you just start squishing it and flipping it over. And once it's mostly in one lump, you start squishing the edge, plop it up so the edge of the ragged edge is in the middle, and you squish that down again. You probably can't see, but as I'm kneading the bread like this, it's gradually getting stiffer. It's feeling like it has more consistency in it, and that's where the gluten in the flour, you see right here, this I didn't have sufficient flour stuck there, so it's stuck to the counter. So I'll just put some more flour, roll it over. People think of gluten nowadays as a bad thing. If you're gluten intolerant, it's not very good. But if you don't have any problems with gluten, as most people don't, it is the way that bread holds its consistency and how it doesn't just fall apart. Now, I'm just rolling this like this. You can do this for 3 minutes. You can do it for 5 minutes. You can do it as long as you want, but you'll keep on doing it and you'll notice a change in the texture. It will feel like it's holding together more. You can see that just as I roll it. I can flip it over and it remains the ball. Now, you go like this and instead of putting the ragged edge on top, you put the ragged edge on the bottom and you fold it under. Pretend your hands are like knife blades, and you make it into what in French is called a boule and in English is called a ball. So it's just a ball of bread, and you can leave it right there and cover it with a damp cloth, or you can take the bowl that you were using and clean it out and get rid of most of the junk that's left and dump that out on the side, and then take some oil and pour and smear on that. And that's what I will do in just a moment. And just dump some oil in, smear it around. And then take this ball and put it top down and spin it around, and then flip it over, and you have a nice ball of bread with a coating of oil on it, which will keep it from drying out. And then put a cloth over top of it, or a piece of plastic wrap or something, and wait. And I'll come back in an hour and show you some more of what's to be done. Thank you for being a part of this, of the Koinonia, making the common life of our presbytery uncommon, so that we can all see how we love each other. The Lord be with you. See you in a bit. Bye. It started already? Hello, everyone. It's been 2.5 hours now, and the bread has risen twice. I punched it down the first time in about 1.5 hours, and now I'm going to show you how I would have done that. It was actually overflowing, and all you do when the first time it rises and you want to punch it down to rise the second time is you just go like this, and it shrinks down. But then if you left it like this, there's a lot more surface to the dough and it could dry out more. So you just pick it up and flip it over, and you can see what it was looking like from the previous time when I punched it down the first time. But now what we'll do is I need a knife, so I'm going to get this knife, and I'll put a little flour down on the board and put the dough out on it, and you squish it down, because one of the things you're trying to do now is to get all of the large bubbles out of the dough so you don't have large voids in the bread that you're making. So you push it down like this, and you see how a bubble there, and you just pop it. And you fold it over and start squishing down the edge, to seal the edge. And then you put it up so that edge is on top. And you push it down again, fold it over, squish down the edge, trying to seal it. And I don't know if you heard that or not, but there were some bubbles popping. Put some more flour down. You don't need to worry about putting too much flour down. It's very hard to ruin this. If you put too little down, the bread dough will stick, and that's not good. So you keep on doing this. You do it for a while. You're pushing down on the edge of the, I make a sign, and I could just say, Susan, would you come over here? You push down on the edge. You're not trying to push like this. You're just trying to squish the edge together with the heel of your hand partway going on the breadboard, and partway end up being on the dough, and you rock it a little bit, and you try keeping your hand having a little flour on it, and you'll learn that when you feel it beginning to stick, you sort of just peel it off, and there's no trouble with it at all. Now I've gotten most of the bubbles out, and what I'm going to do now is divide the dough in half. And now this is what you've been doing since kindergarten, rolling out and making a snake of your clay. And we'll do that with this bread, and then cut it in half. And this is going to make two rather large loaves of bread. And so let's start with the first one. I'm going to show you two different ways of doing that. You just continue kneading the bread like you were doing before. Folding, kneading it, putting the crease edge up, squishing down on it, and then folding it over and doing the same thing. In a little while, you just say, okay, I'm done. And you look and see if you see any bubbles or any parts like this. This would bake and make a rough part on the top. So I put it down again and roll it out. And I don't see any of that this time. So now I squish from the middle. The goal here is to make a fairly even loaf of bread. See this right here? You'll end up putting that rough part on the bottom. So that's how the bread's going to look, but you have to grease a bread pan. Just take a bread pan and put some olive oil in it, or other oil, or Crisco, or butter, and you make sure that it gets into the corners. And then you just take the bread and pop it in there. Now that's going to be a really big loaf. You never know how much bread you're going to make. It really just depends on how much water you add, how much flour you're going to end up with. And then you just cover it And now I'm going to show you how to make something with this loaf. That was a rather large loaf, so I'm going to make two smaller ones right now. The first, so just continue doing the same thing, folding it over and trying to squish and seal the edges. And I've gotten that part done. And now I'm going to make this into a little ball, just like you did with the whole loaf of bread. And now I'm going to grease this pan. And take this ball of bread and just set it right in there. And I do it this way, it will spread out and probably end up hitting the edge of the pans, but it'll be a round loaf of bread. And you could do the same thing with making it into a long sub kind of roll. And I'll show you that in just a moment. When you're doing this, if you have too much flour on it, it's hard to roll it out. It will just slide. So you brush away the flour, most of it, and you just roll it out like so. And I'm making it a little slimmer and longer. And then I'll take a cookie sheet and grease that. And put the bread dough on that, and that will double in bulk as well. Cover both of these and you look at it the way it's rising today, probably in a half hour, maybe an hour at most. And then you put it in the oven at 375 degrees, 350, 375. And we'll see how that works out. I'll be back in a while. The Lord be with you. Welcome back. It's been an hour since I rolled out this dough, and you can see that it's risen a lot, more than doubled in bulk. I covered with plastic wrap, and I moved that first pan of bread into a larger bread pan because there was just too much dough in that. Now I've warmed up the oven to 375, and I'm going to put this in. You have to make sure that when you have your where you put it, so that it won't rise and squish into the top of the rack ahead of it. And that's there. And now we just bake. It takes about 20 minutes, and usually partway through the baking I switch the top and the bottom bread pans, because so it won't burn on the bottom or burn on the top. This time I won't be able to do that because I have 3 racks, and we'll just see how it works out. But again, there's very little you can do to mess up your dough and make good bread. I'll see you in a bit. Bye. It's been more like 40 minutes. The bread is taking longer, but the way you tell when bread is done is just when it turns brown. So let's look at the oven. And you can see that that's, this loaf is a nice brown. And see, it doesn't stick or anything else. The bottom isn't too dark. And this one is working out fine too. The other loaf doesn't seem to be done just yet. It's larger mass, so it's taking a longer period of time to cook. Well, I don't know. That looks done too. So let's go ahead and take that out. You shake it like this and it loosens up, and you just tip it over. It could be a little more well done, but it doesn't have to be. So that's the bread, the making of it. It is now up to the eating of it, and I recommend you always eat some right out of the oven with butter on it. It's delicious. But I hope that you will make some and bring it to the presbytery. Let me know. You can let me know. Look up my address in the church directory or in the presbytery directory, or let Kim know, and I'll get back in touch with you. But your bread will make a difference in making the Koinonia, the common life of our presbytery, very uncommon. So I hope you begin this ministry with me. Thank you very much. The Lord be with you. Bye.